How's it going? Continuing down the path of what critical plugins must you own. You got to have a de-esser of some kind, at least one, probably two. And you want them to work where they sound natural in some way. So I have a few favorites I'm going to talk about, but this is not a sponsored video. These are just the ones I use. And this is critical. This is one of those tools you will use all the time, on at least one on a vocal. Here we go. First step. So like one I use all the time, the UA version, because I love how it runs in real time and it is natural sounding. It's called the Suppressor. This thing is an Oxford Suppressor. Love this thing. Now this is something to remember. Keep it set relatively low. Like between 4 and 6 is a great number to get rid of a lot of harshness in the vocal. So that's my numbers I usually target first. I also may look towards 8K, but in general, that may be to compensate because I had to boost and now it sounds too harsh. So that just lines up with my other point here, which is going to be don't add so much high end that you need to de-ess like crazy. I don't understand 3 de-essers. That sounds like you added way too much high end and now you're having to deal with it. Just don't do that. Don't add that much high end. It's a balancing act. Enough high end where you're brightening it up, the top sounds great, but not so much where now we need to de-ess because it's painful. So you're still going to de-ess a little, but you don't need to de-ess that much if you don't brighten it up that much. So this is one of my favorites. Another one is the WeDS. This is extremely popular for mastering software. I mean the hardware version. So this is the plug-in version of the hardware, and it works sounding naturally as possible. And I will put this is my favorite de-esser probably, but I also use the FabFilter one a lot. FabFilter's de-esser and the Suppressor. I use both of these. Before I had all of these, I had the one that came with the Waves package, which was also not a bad sounding de-esser. That's this one. I watched Dave Pensato use this on a ton of stuff years ago, and I was just like, okay, so this is the one I wound up using. So like the Dave Pensato setting is also around 8, and it's the split, and you know he's attenuating a lot, so the threshold is set pretty low on him when you go to his setting. So like I'm doing similar things, just like on my Suppressor. This is my general setting to control some of that whistle and harshness that will happen when I use a generally bright mic and the setup I have going. So basically, this is another critical thing you have to remember with de-essers. When you're de-essing, and this goes with multiband compression as well, and it also goes with dynamic EQ, when you're doing any of that stuff, do it on the channel itself. I preach parallel processing. I preach the ability to make things sound bigger by using parallel processes in all aspects. But when you are using parallel processes, you cannot treat one of those processes different than the rest in terms of multiband compression, in terms of dynamic EQ, in terms of de-essing, which is basically those. You cannot have multiband compression changing things at certain moments and not in others, happening only on one track. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to take it out of phase. So to avoid that, you have to do that on the channel itself. That way, when you split it out to other things in the parallel process world, it's getting that same signal, that the same changes are happening at the same time. Therefore, the phase will stay coherent. Same relationship. It's not going to be moving and altering as one channel is changing. So caveat, when I use it on bass or something, I don't do that, or I'm not thinking the same way generally, because I may be looking for that. In other words, I may be taking one channel on EQ and doing something drastic to it to complement the sound in some way. Because a lot of times if you have a bass recording, you may just have a DI signal. You're going to have to come up with some creative ways to make it good and make it better, make it bigger, do what you have to do. So sometimes think outside the box, but I'm saying with like a vocal, you're trying to have it present and clear the whole time. Well, that's not a vocal that's coming in and out of phase with itself. Same thing with like guitars, all right? So you want to control the guitars. You don't want them coming in and out of phase, sounding bigger in certain parts, weaker in certain parts. You don't want that. All right. Whereas it's different when you're going for that as a sound as opposed to when you're doing it in this way with parallel processes. Maintain the phase relationship between all your parallel processes and your original, whatever the first channel to all the rest, and you will have a much better, much more cohesive sound. Okay? It will be more consistent. All right? You guys got this. Piece of cake. I'm going to cut it off there right now because we got more coming tomorrow. Custom Cut Studios. My name's Evan Jaffe. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.